Welcome, everyone. Another edition of the live Q&A with Dr. Rob. And we haven't had an opportunity to catch up yet today. It's Monday and it's a holiday, and we haven't had an opportunity to catch up. But, I've had so many like it's been really heartening. I've had a lot of messages that have come in even over the weekend, but also from over the holidays and starting the new year, of people who have been utilizing. I'm sharing this with you because they've been utilizing the materials and the resources that you had a vision for. The whole Seeking Integrity website and platform is it comes out of Dr. Rob's brain. He's a social worker, and it shows because he wants there to be resources for people that may or may not ever be able to come to treatment, may not have that opportunity to get that higher level of help. So all of this was it, it started in the incubator of Dr. Rob's brain, but then we have so many volunteers that support the drop-in groups and live webinars, et cetera. So, but people are incredibly grateful, Dr. Rob, for the resources that you have inspired and created on Seeking Integrity. So I just wanted to give a kudos to you.
Well, ideas are not execution. And Tammy, you have created almost all the free groups. You've helped get all the therapists in. You have established and created some of the work and pay groups. So back at you. I have a lot of good
Yeah, thanks.
ideas. I have endless good ideas, but someone has to carry them out.
I'm a very good implementer. If you haven't figured that
That's a
out,
good
if
word.
you've been on any of these webinars, this is how we work well. So, okay, so we have a question, Dr. Rob. The first one. Oh, this is sad. My husband faked recovery to the point of saying he wanted to do and schedule the formal therapeutic disclosure. But at almost 1 year from D-Day, he served me court papers. He lied and said my mental health, so this is the betrayed partners, is so concerning that he should have full custody, and sent me the most manipulative, insulting, blaming email. He then moved out. He has lied about me to family and friends, one of whom is my best friend who no longer speaks to me. His family has been horribly mean to me. Question is, how do we truly protect ourselves from liars who don't care to change? The chances I gave him to get into recovery were used against me. Wow.
I want to speak just briefly to the whole issue of custody, because I think that's really
Oh,
important.
wait, it goes on. Hang on one second. Furthermore, I've already spent tens of thousands of dollars with an attorney to protect myself, and my kids are with me full time until the court date. So that's the add on. I missed that at first. So I'm sorry to interrupt.
It's okay. Just in as a general experience, and it may not be yours. And again, we speak in generalities, so we don't use specifically. But my experience is often that the court is interested in: do you feed your kids? Do they go to school? Do they get tucked in bed at night? Are they well cared for? And this is my attempt to be reassuring. And I have spouses who say, he did this and he did that, and the court doesn't always care. And I've had on both sides, well, she did this or whatever. And my hope is that, and every situation is different. And Tammy, have talked about this. Boy, once lawyers are involved. So my heart goes out to you in terms of, you love someone, they hurt you, you have children with them, they don't want to work on it, okay. But to create that level of enmity, to take what was a meaningful relationship with children and just tear each other apart, I'm just so sad for you. And I'm sad that where I come to is he's having an affair, there's someone else in his life, he's moving on, he's already, I mean, that's where my head goes, because he's got something else going on that he decided to do this. Mental health. So, this is a big issue for me, which is when I see a couple and the spouse, and we're say a woman has just found out that her husband has seen 100 prostitutes and he's looking at porn every night and he's seeing sex workers. And I'm, overstating it, but nonetheless, she loses her mind. I mean, everything that she has believed about a relationship is gone. Any sense of trust that we've established is gone. Spouses I've heard say, I don't know what the past has meant. I don't know where we are now, and I have no idea what the future will be. Some of you have kids, it's a nightmare. And so, the addicts walk in, and I've had lots of couples therapy, and an addict comes in and says, gosh, I'm so sorry, and I mean to do this, and I'm going to work on myself, and, I'm really committed. And the spouse looks like a mess. They're crying, they're weeping, they haven't eaten, they're overwhelmed. And then the therapist says, "Oh, well, look who," and then the addict says, "Well, see what I'm living with? No wonder why I'm crazy or having affairs." So in that moment, the therapist only looks at what that partner looks at in that moment. And one of the things I've tried to do with writing Prodependence and all that is to say, wait a minute, the spouses say things like, "I've become never someone I never thought I'd be. And I never wanted to be this person who was nagging, complaining, and crying." So I think it's very easy for an addict to take one moment of time and say, look how they're acting. And that is probably you at your worst. So um, I think there is often a misperception about and a broadening of what the partner's going through. Like, you've always been this way, and I've never been happy, and all of that kind of stuff. Easy to blame you. And by the way, just one more thing about that. I can create a really horrible set of circumstances and feel okay with it by saying it's your fault. It's your fault to do this, and your fault that I don't follow through, and you treat me badly. And boy, pointing that finger is such a great way for me to not take responsibility. And for every partner, please, I say this every week if I have to. If you are saying to yourself, well, if I'd just done this, or maybe I'd done that, or maybe, 100 things, and I'm going to tell you, I don't care how horrible you've been. I mean, I do, but to your spouses, how miserable you've made me, and under any circumstances, my decision to go act out with another person, my decision to drink, my decision to enter my addiction is mine and mine alone. And every addict, especially under codependency, wants to say, well, look at all the things that are wrong with my partner. And, again, I think partners in a moment of major crisis, you do like crazy people because crazy things have happened to you. And it's very easy to take that moment and say, look how crazy they are. And every addict is so eager to say, well, look at them. So I just wanted to throw things out there. And Tammy, one of the things I noticed, I'm hoping you respond to, is how do we protect ourselves? The chances I
Yeah.
gave were used against me. Things like that. So I just wondered if you could talk about that piece.
I, I'm seriously fighting back tears. I feel horrible about this. And I think, Dr. Rob, and I don't know, but this doesn't feel like just addiction. This feels like somebody who is like a higher order. I can't diagnose, but like this
More
is.
disturbed.
Yes, that's a good way of saying it. Like this feels like there's something more going on than just addiction, I mean, that's a lot of stuff. Like that was a really planned out, to get you, And so yeah, my heart hurts. And yeah, and here you are, and I say this to lots of partners. You would never do this stuff. And so of course you don't anticipate. You can't get the chess piece ahead of him because you don't think like this. You wouldn't
Hmm.
ever do this. You wouldn't put your children and your family and your relationship, in jeopardy. And he did, and I was talking to somebody last week, and they were like, he feels like he won. And I was like, and nobody wins in this, I did put in the chat, we had a 4-part series on should I say or should I go, and there was one on the legal, and it says, if you think the legal system is going to yeah, make you feel better, it doesn't. That's not its job. And again, no real winners in any of that. So you clearly can't change him. He clearly doesn't want to be on a recovery path. You can't undo what he's done, and so here you are. And I hear you. You've got, an attorney. You're working on doing these things. Um, I don't know if you can protect yourself from somebody who
I
is
haven't thought about
that.
that.
What? Oh, you do? Okay,
Hmm.
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I don't mean, I hate when I
No,
interrupt
please.
you.
No.
But this one really struck me. Number one, I agree with Tammy. I think that if you look back at your relationship and you really look deeply at the decisions he's made and the way he's acted, and I think you could probably come up with a pattern, if nothing else, of an incredible selfishness and a lack of caring. And I haven't answered your question, but the most disturbing, and God bless you. I'm sorry you're going through this life, through these things in life. But what about your children? What kind of man who is a parent puts the mother through this incredibly, forget about the kids, this incredibly difficult set of circumstances, makes her vulnerable, not the mom she wants to be, the kids not, forget about the couple and what they're seeing, but you're not able to be the best you can be because of this nightmares that's been created for you. So Tammy wants to cry, and I want to get this guy. I'm so angry. Um, I think Tammy would agree with this. The way you can protect yourself is by taking care of yourself.
Yes,
You know,
yes, that's where I was going.
I
Yes,
don't
I
know that you can
agree.
protect yourself from him. And sometimes people do need to get lawyers, trust me. But how often are you having a little bit of fun with friends? Are you, if you can afford it, going out and getting massage? Have you learned a little bit about meditation? And by the way, Lord knows you don't have to go to a yoga class and have money for it. You don't have to. The good news about today, the internet, is you can sit. Um, John was saying to my husband, just, you don't have to buy one of those expensive bikes that tells you how to do this and that. Just get on our little bike and follow what's on the video. So I do think there are a lot of ways that you can find some peace with this by looking into and finding also the support groups. Tammy, and maybe you could mention this to her on Seeking Integrity. There are a number of support groups. I don't know if Will You Stay or Will You Go is still on there. I don't remember. But
Moving on alone.
we did do one,
Yes.
a podcast on sex, love, and addiction. The podcast, Sex, Love, and Addiction, which is about collaborative divorce. And while
Hmm.
it speaks to how to have a healthy divorce, what Tammy is talking about is that piece about attorneys. And the law, and my colleague Stuart, who's an attorney, will say the same thing, which is the law is not designed to be on anyone's side, to help you. Lawyers, some of them, make a lot more money the more hours they work. Sorry to you attorneys, but that's how your world is sometimes set up. So I do not expect the legal system to protect you, and certainly this man is not going to protect you. The only thing think you can do is gain strength for yourself, so you can find a way to regain your strength and feel good about yourself in this horrible situation, because he's not going to do it. Oh, by the way, Tammy, could you say something about the people who've turned away from her, like the
That's where I
family?
was going next too, is
Good.
and this is my worldview is friends or family members, and I think you said it was his family. Well, they're of course going to agree with him, but let's talk about your
Best
best
friend.
friend. Yeah, that one bothers me because a best friend would reach out and say, "Hey, I'm hearing some challenging stuff. Can I be supportive? Can I talk to you? Whatever." So, so have found my true friends are the ones that are able to actually show up and be present, not tell me what I should or shouldn't do, but just to be there and to give it an ear. I love what Dr. Rob said about the drop-in groups. Yeah, I put the link, and there is one, Moving On Alone, and it's for partners who have been left, or have, I always say, 1.5 feet out the door. Like it doesn't have to be, but the focus is
Mm.
there is not about how do we repair the relationship. And sadly, you will always co-parent. Like there will be, however you do this. I did put, Dr. Rob mentioned Arlene Rosen's. She did a webinar with me and a podcast with Dr. Rob on sex, love, and addiction on collaborative divorce. And that I also did put, should I stay or should I go? The fourth one was on the legal system. And there was one on mediation, the third one with Deborah Doak. So there's resources on here to navigate that part of it. But I guess I just want to say nothing you could have done would have prepared you for this, to see all of these patterns. He's a master manipulator. If you saw something, I bet he had 14 different reasons why you were crazy. It didn't really happen that way. You were
It serves him.
whatever. Yes. And
Mhm.
so I think he is really good at manipulating things and getting what he wants. But you can't make that unhappen. So where I was going was, here's where you are now. What do you need to do to take care of you and your kiddos? And I love what Dr. Rob was saying. A yoga mat with a YouTube video, like walking. We do lots of things. We talk about all the different ways to get grounded, and centered. We have a work group starting tomorrow, the healthy boundaries, and that includes internal boundaries. Debbie McCrae is the queen of healthy boundaries. That could be really helpful for you. It's low cost, but high impact. So consider that. That's on the Seeking Integrity website under the work group tab. You'll see that you can still register for that. So, and that would be a little self care, but it also would be. I mean, she talks about the specifics for people. This isn't therapy. but she, like instead of just giving a webinar, she's talking, like you'll ask questions and you'll talk about, different things. So, but I'm glad you've got legal support, but please lean into to the support network. I didn't mention, but We Tonglen, WETONGLEN, is all women who have been betrayed, and there are a lot of people who have been through lots of different things.
It's a
There is a
website.
therapist. Yeah, yes,
Hmm.
and you have to get approved. So, and there was a therapist that actually had a similar situation. You can email me. I think she does some coaching now. Email TAMI at Seeking Integrity. Remind me of this. And if you want her information, I will put you in touch with her. And what you choose to do with it is up to you. But I actually, there's two of them I can think of that could be really helpful for you as well. So, but I am sorry for you, but I'm so glad you're here and reaching out and connecting.
I actually want to say one more thing about
Please.
friends, which is, and you know this, Tammy, as well as
Mhm.
I do, is when you're in addiction, or when you're in your addiction, or when you're in a partner in crisis. I've had the addicts sit down and look at the real challenges they have in their recovery and look at the people in their lives who've either been accepting or supportive or without, and they didn't act out with them. They didn't go to strip clubs with them. They didn't. And it's not unusual in that process for someone to say, you know what, I have to give up some of the people who are really important to me. I thought that it was this or that, but now I realize they're just supporting my problems rather than the healing. And so I just want to say to you, if it brings you any peace, that there may be people you leaned on very heavily who are able to be supportive in many situations, but in this, for whatever reason, they're not. And maybe at least here, this is someone you can't lean into. And that's okay. Some of the best friends I made were in these recovery groups and in these support groups, because then I found people who knew what I was going through. And you really need that support. And I didn't hear that here, which is I'm surrounded by a bunch of men or women who are really there for me. And that is one of the ways you can protect yourself, is have people to have your back. So, okay.
Okay, the next one. I'm gonna get rid of these. Can you give insight on interviewing a sex worker? Vanessa Carlisle, my husband CSAT used seeking sex workers
Sex
as a,
workers.
yeah, as a qualifier for diagnosis of SA. If the CSAT community can't agree on what qualifies as SA, how can you classify what is a problem? I've listened to other podcasts with this sex worker, and she sees sex work and pornography as liberating. I don't necessarily disagree, but how can a sex worker offer info on intimacy when the person seeking their services using them as an object? So, yeah.
Go ahead,
Mm,
Tammy.
well, I'm just like, we work really hard at having good resources because there's a lot of stuff out there, and there's a lot of CSATs that we don't refer to because
They don't
they
really understand the word.
well, like I heard recently
Mhm.
about a CSAT who doesn't believe in doing disclosures because if he had given a disclosure, his wife would have left him. Like that's an automatic disqualifier for a referral from us because we want people to, we want people to have done their work and so they'll be able to. Um, and sex workers, like there's lots of people who have sex addiction or porn addiction that have never seen a sex worker, but their behaviors absolutely line up with compulsive behaviors that they can't stop that have caused problems, negative consequences, so this feels this feels um there is a teaching for the CSAT community, and then there's thousands of therapists. And so some of them have letters behind their name, um, but aren't really following the guidelines of helping with sex addiction. But lots of CSATs are doing great work. So I don't want to lump every CSAT into a pile. They're so nuanced, and we have so many amazing therapists that we do refer to. I know literally thousands of therapists around the world, and I give referrals. I probably give 100 referrals a week to people. But if a CSAT is literally saying that the only way you can be a sex addict is if you've seen a sex worker, that would not be in alignment with any of the teachings that are taught to become a CSAT. So they are out operating outside the scope of that. Um, as for it being liberating or whatever, I mean, yeah, yeah.
I
Could you
want to tackle
please?
that
Yeah,
one.
please do. I was gonna say I'm gonna
So
leave that to you. So,
I don't, sometimes people confuse, and I'm not saying this for you, but I'm going to say it because of your circumstance, say it in general. Um, I'm going to say sex therapists and that's sex workers. So
oh, that's a
people
good point.
who,
Yeah,
if I'm an alcoholic, there are only it's only certain therapists I can see. Now there's some people will say as a therapist, oh, don't worry about drinking, just have a drink or two, it relaxes you, or, unless you've driven into a tree, it's probably not a problem. Well, it's probably not a problem for a whole bunch of people, but for some people it is. And so if you are someone with this kind of problem, you don't need someone who's going to encourage behavior that is going to help them escalate. And so the way I think about it, I want to be really clear, is there are people who benefit from porn. There are people who may need some kind of involvement with a sexual partner that is a sex worker as supervised by a sex therapist. But those people, maybe they've never had sex, or they're so afraid of intimacy they're not able to be close to someone, or they've never been able to have a penetration, or whatever that is. And there is a place, absolutely, for people who struggle with sexual behavior or physical trauma, whatever that is, to learn how to grow those things. And I just want to say this: we don't we don't refer to anyone who does that kind of work, but we will refer to a qualified sex worker. I'm sorry, we will refer to a qualified sex therapist
therapist. Yeah.
after there's a number of years of recovery. If you are still struggling with being intimate after you've struggled with 2 or 3 years of just really getting through all the horrible stuff, sex can be sex acts are afraid of intimacy. That's part of our deal. And partners are very hurt and very angry. So to bring these two people back into a place where they can be physically intimate, and you guys ask that a question all the time here, by the way, which is, we've gotten this far and how do we find out to be sexual again? For some people, it's a sex therapist. For some people, it's a couples therapist. So I don't want to devalue that field, especially since sex therapy is my PhD. But I very clearly know that there are circumstances in which, and they're narrow and they're boundaried, in which that might be appropriate. I'm not saying the sex worker, I don't, maybe there are some that are very carefully supervised. By the way, sex work as a part of therapy kind of left us with AIDS, and we really don't see that much of that anymore. But for some people, and I know this is going to be hard for some of you. I hope not, because what I don't want addicts to do, and they will, is jump under this and say, "Well, Dr. Rob said I could look at porn." I am not saying that. I am saying that I remember when I went to graduate school and got my master's in social work, and they would show us some films on how people would benefit, people who are very inhibited, people on learning about sexual techniques, about learning how to approach each other, about learning about how growing a physical connection can lead into sex. So we do learn about it and we do talk about it, but you have to know who you're seeing. And it has to be within a certain set of circumstances. Sex addicts should not be looking at porn, and alcoholics should not be walking into bars. There's a very clear line. So, um, what I would say, there's a couple of things about the therapist. If I don't feel comfortable with what that therapist is, the way they're engaging, I can simply say, I really respect the work you're doing, but this doesn't fit into, again, back to support groups, all the people I've talked to, all the education I've done, it just doesn't fit into that paradigm. And I respect you, but I don't have to see you. The other thing about therapists, just to say, and I think a lot of you don't know this, is you can interview us. A good therapist will say, and I have many times, someone said, could I just get to know you? Could I just, will you charge me? I didn't, some do, but they had to get a sense of me. I had to get a sense of them and how they looked at the issues. And then we all had to feel there was a fit. I'll say one more thing, which is there's an endless research about good therapy, and what is it and what is it not, and all that stuff. But there is one common thing to all good therapy. It's the relationship between you and the therapist. If you feel safe, if you feel understood, if they are saying things that really leave you feeling growing and connected to them, because we do have a relationship, it's a working relationship, then that's a good person to see, provided all the other qualifiers are there. But someone I disagree with and I feel uncomfortable with, they're not going to be the therapist that works for me. They may work for someone else, but not for me. Um, the last thing it happened to me was we were just talking about this, that we've done podcasts on healthy sexuality after, the crisis of addiction. Educate yourself. There are a lot of videos. We have some. There are a lot that talk about, what is healthy sexuality for a couple after these things are happened. How do they engage it? We were just talking, and we're going to have a podcast for a couples therapist who specializes in sexuality after betrayal. That's what they do. Um, so Tammy can be reached at TAMI at seekingintegrity.com. TAMI at seekingintegrity.com. And the reason I tell you that is, as she said, she knows a gazillion therapists who really know what they're doing. And I mean, that would never guide you down this road. Maybe one more thing. As a sex therapist, it's often my job to help people be comfortable with sexuality. And it may be, and it is a part of it for some of us, to hand someone a sex, something they use as well, I'll just say it. Some people may need a dildo. Some people may need to, all kinds of things to help them encourage to engage in what for them is healthy sexuality because they're afraid of it or have whatever it is for them. There is a place for a sex therapist. But like Tammy said, expert, who is an expert. So someone I was saying here, I was saying this on podcast, good for some people, not good for some other people. So I don't want to degrade or devalue sex therapists. I will say a CSAT, we haven't said this, is a certified sex addiction therapist. Certified sex addiction therapist. And those are letters that you will see after our names. And I don't think seeing a generalist therapist is going to be best for this situation. We are trained hundreds of hours of training and then also supervision. And we are guided through this process. And so if you are going to choose some, choose an expert. And as Tammy says, there may be many experts, they don't know what the heck they're doing when you walk in the room, educated, but don't have it in here. So that is why Tammy, and I think graciously and at no cost, will absolutely refer you to someone who knows what they're doing. And thank goodness these days, if you live in Omaha and you're in Nebraska, you don't live near Omaha. That's where the sex there. That's where the CSATs are. You can do the work from home. I mean, you can engage them from your own state. So, um, yeah, I think that's my whole thing, Tammy.
Well, and somebody added, and I'd like actually, because I was like, I don't recognize that name, and like I know lots of CSATs. No, she is a PhD in creative writing and gender studies. And this person says there's no way qualified to offer perspective on intimacy. She also is a death doula and a coach on the in the fields of gender, sexuality, and trauma. And yeah, like that would I love what Dr. Rob said about, being a qualified professional. And there are sex therapists that we do refer to, and they are trained also to work with sex addiction. Because if it's just a sex therapist, they don't have the training. So this is all about, I say this all the time. If you had cancer, you want the cancer specialist, you want the best help to help you, not your general practitioner who's great. You love them when you get a flu shot, etc. This is this tough stuff, and you want to have the best foundation for being able to move forward. And yes, anybody unfortunately and can post that they're this, that, and the other thing. So doing the investigative work on what are their qualifications, what is their training, and what is their beliefs on these things. Not every website has that. So I love what Dr. Rob has talked about of having most therapists do, the ones that I've worked with too, offer, a 20-minute, get to know you introduction, just to have a look. So you can have a list of questions. And if you're reaching out, I give a list of people, more than one name. I get no kickbacks. I get no kickbacks.
You
This is
get
one of those.
validation, you get
Well,
support, you get to feel
people
like you
are
help people,
appreciative, and
you get
yeah,
discreet.
I do. I like to
Mhm.
help, and so, but it's one of those things where if you have the same list of questions and you ask three different therapists about that, what's resonating, what you go, yeah, that one feels like the right fit for me. And guess what? This is not a lifelong commitment. This is like, who can help me with these are the issues I have
Mhm.
now. In 6 months or a year, you may go like, yeah,
Mhm.
they've helped me so much with this, but
Mhm.
now I need to do something different. Okay. So it can be a little fluid from that standpoint. I will caveat it because I hear the people who have gone to 5 different CSATs and they're looking for the perfect CSAT. And I'm going like, no, the problem is the person, because that's the hub on all of these people. So at some point, stop and, like, what are you balking at? It's usually the addict partner. Actually, it's 99% that, and like, oh, they just need the right CSAT. No, they need to do the work. They need to, to stop, looking for the magic whatever and do the work, and things will change. So
I wanted to offer one more thing, which is this is
Please.
another reason to go to support groups because you'll hear people say these are the things that my therapist has done right. I really learned a lot from them, or I'm really
Mhm.
uncomfortable, like you're talking about.
Mhm.
And not everyone in the group is going to know someone in Omaha or Florida, but there will be people who've had good experiences. So listen to what they have to say. Listen to what has helped them. And you can always say, "Hey, I'm looking for someone, in New York. Does anyone know someone?" Or you will get. And when I go to 12-step meetings, people will say, I have a great therapist. I'm really grateful. They can't say what it is in the meeting, but I walk up to them and say, well, what do you think they're good at? Why do you feel comfortable? Do you think they'd be a good person for me? So educating yourself about what other people are doing. Now, people pick bad therapists. I get that, but just getting the information and then you can interview those people in case you don't want to reach out to TAMI at seekingintegrity.com. Okay, what are we up?
Okay. Can you speak to the losing control piece of acting out? My husband had a lot of control. He planned his acting out around business trips and when I was working where he would not get caught. He never lost any control. Acting out never interfered with life or his life, or with work or his life. When everything came to light, he stopped. Full stop. Does that indicate emotional immaturity or some kind of psychopathy?
Well, first of all,
That's a good question.
acting never out interfered with work or life. Do you think it interfered with your marriage? Do you think it interfered with your relationship? Do you think it interfered with raising your children or or self-respect or so life can be, I guess I want to say something about that. You'd be surprised how functional people are who are in this kind of addiction. I work with lots of people who are high level professionals. They're lawyers, they're doctors. You'd think, why would someone so smart, so good would end up in this situation? And the truth is this is a deep emotional problem. The emotions pull on the intellect. So the emotions, and we do have an intellect. There's a part of me, if I were acting on this, said, this is a good idea. And it might affect this and it might affect that. But I am so emotionally drawn into it on a whole bunch of levels that I lose the ability to make those good decisions. Um, we don't talk a lot about it here, but I know it is in the courses that we teach, which is about the biological element of this. And if you understand addiction, and by the way, Tammy said, and I agree with this, if you're not an addict, you don't understand how we think. And you think, how could someone do that? Or how, because our brains are different, the way who we are is different. We're just different. And we do think that way, um, which is hard for you to understand. But what was I going to say? Um, the way it works in a very basic way is the closer I get to the acting out, the harder it is for me to stop. So I might be home thinking about it and I get a little racing heart, a little bit of excitement. And then I get on some websites and my heart beats a little faster and I get a little more excited. And then I get in the car. And so addiction is like a rock rolling downhill. The closer I get to it, the faster it's going to go. And so one of the things we learn in treatment is help someone recognize when they're beginning to get in trouble so they don't end up, so that that momentum doesn't continue. So he, when you see lose control, if he, well, two things. Um, well, actually, let me just say it this way. Emotional immaturity, sure. He's cheating you. He's treating you badly. In fact, I've said this and I wrote about this in Out of the Doghouse, which I wrote, and I think I wrote Out of the Doghouse for men who cheat in general. And one of the things I say is, sex addicts cheat for all kinds of reasons and they're deeply troubled. Someone else might cheat because they're immature and they're not able or committed to or understand the meaning of a committed relationship. So, cheaters, so to speak, depending on their pattern and what they've done, could just be, I guess, emotionally shallow. I guess is what I would put it, and have difficulty connecting to you. Um, and I'll say two more things. The number two things, the two situations that addicts act out over is travel and unstructured time alone. Because when I travel, I think, oh, well, there won't be anyone there and no one will know me. And I'm on my computer and I've made the plan. And, so it's almost like I'm a different person in a different place, so there's this idea. And by the way, rock rolling downhill, I'm already thinking, oh, I'm going away Friday. Who might I talk to? I might do a little chatting online. So even though I haven't left yet for an addict, those wheels are already turning by the time I land. The other piece is unstructured time. which is the family goes away for a holiday and we're there alone. And I actually think part of what drives that is anxiety. That when we don't have plans and we don't have structure, we start to get anxious and fearful. We start to look for something to fill that up. Um, this is the last thing I'll say, and I don't know you. I don't know your circumstances. I wish you a happy and meaningful life where the man you're with has realized what he did was really stupid, really harmful, and found a way from the cheating and the challenges to understanding and finding a way back to you, whether it was at your pain or the work he did on himself, I don't know. But when I say to you something as an addict, and I promise, I promise, I promise, it isn't always the truth. I will say things to you that I will say things to you that I know will keep you from getting upset with me. I will say things because I don't want more to be revealed. I lie, I manipulate, I gaslight. And so for something to say to you, um, when everything came to light, he stopped. Well, I don't know what came to light, and the other thing is, I don't know, we don't stop on our own. We stop. It's a process. We need support. We need accountability. We need structure. We're pretty troubled people. It isn't just in the sex. We have challenges emotionally in a whole bunch of ways. So I don't mean to leave you feeling doubtful of where the two of you are, but I will say in a general way, when there's been a serious problem and an addict turns around and says, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm doing better. I understand the problem." I am really suspect because you can't do all of those things and then just suddenly stop. It's a process. So, yeah, I worry a little bit about your circumstances. And if not yours, I wanted to put out there to many of you, oh, they said this, and boy, they were so honest about it. And I really feel like this time, mm, we say this all the time. What are you seeing them doing? Not promising, not words, but are they going to support groups? Are they seeing a therapist about this issue? Are they educating themselves? Are they listening? What is the activity? What are the activities they're engaging in that say, I want this to change? And I'm not talking about reading a book. So my fear would be someone who says, I'm fine, it's gone, I won't hurt you anymore. But what have they done? What are they doing? Words are great, but once I've proven that I can't trust, you can't trust me, and I violated you, then it's about my actions. Um, so yeah, Tammy, did I leave you anything to say? Leave you anything
No,
to
I
say?
do because I'm with you. It's like, yeah, like he never lost control. So he never once said this trip, business trip, I'm not going to do that, or while the family's gone, I'm not going to act out, and still acted out anyway. I'm also thinking of like, yeah, rather than planning his acting out, while he was on the business trip, could he have been doing, like, lots of people don't get the promotion that they were, could have had they actually done their work, but they were busy thinking of the
Right.
acting out or planning all of this. There's so many examples of that. I won't go into that, but I don't, I agree with Dr. Rob too. It's like, could, like, while on the business trip, could he have been FaceTiming you and catching up on your day, been doing something, planning the family trip, whatever? Were there other things that, reading to kids over over FaceTime? Like, there could have been other things that could have been done so that it would have been a connection point rather than I'm going to go do my life. So I think it feels really black and white that he never lost control. I suspect he did because I like, and yes, he could have gone, yeah, this is just what I do, and I always am choosing this. I don't know him, so I don't know. That is not what typically is happening. There's usually some shame and remorse and regret, and I'm not going to do that again. And then we do. So I don't know. But as I mean, if he has stopped all those behaviors and is moving forward, if everything else has changed along with his, because just stopping the
Right.
behaviors is just abstinence. That's just like not doing what we weren't supposed to do. That doesn't change anything. If his
Mhm.
actions are now, he's really connecting, he's showing up, there's transparency and honesty, and like taking accountability for all of the things he missed out on because he was acting out. That's different. That would be really hopeful. So
I wanted to add something, which is it's nice to hear that from your partner, but is there an environment you're putting it in where you can work on it together? Even if it's just working through the pain, if you feel comfortable with what they've said, it's still been a major violation of your trust. It is something you do need to work through with therapy. You do need to go to a support group. You do need, and what I didn't hear is how. How did he get there to the change? How did we get through the crisis? I heard, which I want every partner wants to hear, is it's gone, It's over. Everything's going to be fine. And who doesn't want to believe that? I mean, I would certainly would. So if minimum, I would find an environment where the two of you can really sit down and talk about what's happened. The other thing that I didn't know is, how did you find out? I'm just curious about, the way it was hidden, the way you found out. And I'll tell you what, as an addict, I will only tell you as much as you know. I don't want you to find anything else. So if you found out I was having an affair, I'm not going to tell you about the porn because that would make you more upset. So I'll tell you about the affair because you know about the affair and I can't lie about that, but I can lie about the porn. So again, I don't, not everyone who comes here for sure has a partner who's a sex addict. Not everyone who comes here for sure is in the kind of crisis and concerns that we speak to. Um, but I don't hear resolution and I don't hear anything other than his word. And I really don't hear, and this worries me, is there's a lot of focus on him. He did this and he didn't do that, and he says this. And what about you? What about your pain? What about your unhappiness? Is there a support group? You're like Tammy said, I'll take it on as a social worker. I am concerned about people who don't have the resources. If you don't have money, go to a free group. There are gazillions of them, and we offer seekingintegrity.com. You can find them there. So there are many, many different pieces. I think what I'm talking about is some kind of external place to get feedback, to ask these questions, and to find some peace with it. Um, so words, not actions. I mean, actions, not words. Okay, drag me along here, Tammy.
Okay, here's the next one. Over 2 months ago, my addict partner crossed my bottom line. He has not tried to talk things through, and our communication is completely broken down. It's sad to see after 5 years of staying open to rebuilding. He he couldn't do 1 hour of connection and check time a week, not even daily with me when I was open. But now I see him spend hours and hours daily on house projects like building a new goat house from scratch. What is that about? It's sad to see what he prioritizes. It's not me and the marriage.
Why don't you start with that one, Tammy? You
I-
look like I see a light bulb going on your head. So
Yeah,
why
no,
don't you
I
go
go,
ahead?
and I'm really sorry. Dr. Rob does this all the time. Come here, go away. Come here, go away. Like I suspect that this is a person who is, terrified of vulnerability, maybe acting in shame, maybe acting it back out. Um, but you said he crossed your bottom line and is not open to talking about it. I'm curious what was if you had a bottom line boundary, what was the consequence? What was the stated consequence that you were going to do if he crossed that? So yeah, lots of addicts, some even stop the problematic behavior, abstinence, but they never get the recovery piece. And that is like, I think the worst place to be, like, because you're not leaning into the acting out, but you're also not getting all the benefits of recovery. But that disconnect, and I'm going to kind of mirror what Dr. Rob said to the last person. What are you doing to take care of you? Like, the what is that all about? Is he, it doesn't sound like he's, is he going to 12-step meetings? Does he talk to a therapist? Do you guys have a couples therapist that you're working with? Like, this would be couples therapy stuff to help navigate that. And I guess, I mean, lots of partners stay in a relationship, and but they create a whole network of people that they can have joy with and everything else. And it ends up being more like a roommate situation at the house because this person is not emotionally available, but you've got a house, you've got a life, the finances, like it just works for you on some level, and it's okay. But when some addicts addiction steals all the joy from partners, I find that to be, you know it doesn't have to be that way. You can, there's lifelines to healing and help for you. So thoughts?
Yeah, I wanted to say something about this too, which is, hold on, let me see. Um, well, first of all, I'll speak to the other piece, which is, we may stop acting out, but that doesn't mean we know how to connect.
Yes.
And and by the way, if he has found something that brings him pleasure, that is fun for him, that is not a problem, I'm all about hobbies and recreation. I think addicts, yeah, I work with an addict. What do you do for fun? I see sex workers. Well, what do you do to relax? I look at porn. And if you add all these hours together, one of the things that someone says is, what do I do with all that time? And it may well be that a part of him has found a place to be creative, a place that he enjoys, Unfortunately, I'll give a secret about me and Tammy. I like to clean when I get upset. There's nothing
We
worse than
both clean
dishes.
toilets. It's ridiculous. We go clean. So
Oh,
yeah.
I don't clean toilets, but I do a lot of
You did.
cooking.
You used to. I'm going to go clean the toilet. You said that.
That
Okay,
might
he
not be
doesn't
the
do that
first thing I'll
anymore.
bring
So
up,
yeah.
but I will do the dishes, and so that's not a joyful thing. But there are non-hurtful ways where I can be compulsive and lose myself in something. Okay, that's how I soothe myself. I grew up in a home that was very dirty. Sadly, for me, it makes me feel better. I am pleased when an addict finds things that they enjoy doing. What I am concerned about is that he isn't focusing on you and the relationship as a priority. Um, he's out doing this thing, working on that, great. But is he coming back to you and saying, are you saying, I really want more time together. I really want to focus. And what I see is not tried to talk things through. I assume you've asked, and I assume the answer is not what you want to be hearing. Um, what else did I want to see here? What I hear is that you have needs, and they're perfectly legitimate needs, and they're not being met, and you're stuck. You don't know what to do. And um, one of the things I would sit and write down, because I think this is important, is what do I need from this relationship? Do I need, and is this person available for it? I know I need, what do I need? Just with the things of it, I need someone who's very patient with me because, as Tammy can say, I'm a little challenging. Um, you are someone who needs to be meaningfully connected in ways that aren't being met. Another thing I would write down is, how would you know if you were getting what you want in this relationship? So I may not um, I may not be attentive in the way you might think attentive in a relationship. I may not sit down and talk about, but there are things we can do together that I really enjoy. There are ways of connecting that addicts are intimacy avoidant, but are there ways that you can connect? We play games. We play Wordle and send our scores back and forth. I actually think that, one of the ways of getting intimate online, you can actually take advantage online and say, okay, we do. I did Wordle and Wordle may not be. I played a game online and this is how I did. You're playing the same game and what did you do? So I think there are many, many ways to be open and connected without necessarily having deep and meaningful conversations. And I will say this, I guess I'm defending on the other side, but um, I'm a my ther oh, I don't want to say this. I'll say this in this way. Women tend to be more emotionally curious. You tend to be more engaged. If I'm a man, you're a woman, and I say, "Oh my God, I had a terrible day," you might ask, what's going on with that? How did that? What's meaning? What's the problem? How can I help? If you're someone who says that to a man, we're going to fix it. We're going to make it better. We're going to solve the problem. We're not necessarily going to listen. So, what defines for you feeling connected? And that's something that you could talk about rather than I'm not getting this or we're not doing that is how do we find some ways where we could connect and we could get closer? It may not mean, at least for him, having deep and meaningful conversations. One of the things the therapist says to me, and because I set this thing up by saying women tend to be more emotionally engaged. So my husband comes home, he's upset about something, and my therapist said, and please forgive me. I know it's a feminist world, and I'm hugely supportive of. You can tell me. You can write. Tammy can afford tell you that. But my therapist say, you're kind of the girl of the relationship. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, she said, well, your husband says, whatever he says, and he's done. And you say, well, what did that mean? And how are you doing? And how do you feel about it? She's like, some people just don't want to talk about it. So you maybe have different emotional needs. You may have different ways of finding your way there. I wouldn't despair. I would explore. And this is, by the way, where someone who's really a couples therapist can help you find their way through this. But I agree with Tammy. I don't know what the bottom line is. If the bottom line is he went back to seeing sex workers, that's a lot different than I find him still lying and keeping secrets that are not related to sex. So eh, I would sit and write, what do I need? How do I need it? How do I know that it's being demonstrated? Go beyond the talking and see what other ways you can find to connect that will be meaningful for both of you, but may not be that I'm going to sit in front of you and talk for an hour about how we're feeling. There are many ways to connect. And I guess I'll say one more thing. You know, our colleague Stan Tatkin. So this man is an expert on attachment and relationships, and he is, I think, one of the kings of it. And he's written some wonderful books, Stan Tatkin, Tatk, on about relationships. But he said, you know, the best some people could do is they sit together and they're both on the computer, but they're next to each other, they're near each other. My husband will often say, "Oh, did you see that? Look how funny this is," or "Look at that," or "Did you know this?" And so even though we're side by side and you'd think that that's the best we could do. Maybe for some people, the best they can do is be side by side in a connected place, but not necessarily doing something together or talking to each other. So I think a lot of definition about what is intimacy for you, what he can and cannot be capable of. And ultimately you have to decide, you know, can I live without this? I know there are a lot of things in a relationship that I would like that I have learned I'm not going to get, but I get other things. And so there's a lot of meat on this bone. I think there's a lot of ways that you can learn and mostly learn about what your expectations are and how they might or might not be met. Because sometimes I just don't want to talk about it, although it's usually him who doesn't want to talk about it. I just had a bad day. Why do you need to know? It is what it is. Okay, I had a fight. I want to, and I'm like, what did it mean? How do you feel? Anyway, I'm not saying that is your experience, but there are many ways to be connected other than the way that you're trying to be.
But in the chat, the Healthy Boundaries Work Group, Trust and Connection with Debbie McCrae starts tomorrow. I can't stress that enough. She talks about internal boundaries. How do you take care of you? You find out what your healthy boundaries are for you, so
Hmm.
you are not betraying you. So there's more. We've got a bunch of questions, and I want to get to a few of these. So,
Thanks,
okay.
Tammy.
So the next one is, what about the individual that did not act out to escape, but rather was excited to act out and considered this more of a hobby? Can you imagine parents post? Can you imagine putting on your resume, my hobbies are cheating, sexually acting out? I don't think so. But Dr. Rob talks all the time about intensity rather than intimacy. So yeah, it isn't necessarily it may be a form of escape. It can be dissociation, but it can be that intensity. Like the why. I Dr. Rob and I have talked about this lots. It's like that's interesting, but lots of people know the why and they still act out. So it's, how do I stop this now, and what do I need to do to move forward? Those are more useful questions. So yeah, like it's like drinking beer or drinking whiskey. Yeah, still a problem. So it doesn't, it doesn't matter. Like it matters and it doesn't matter. Like Dr. Rob talks often about what the work that Seeking Integrity does is stop the problematic behaviors, have a plan, and then you can start investigating all the stuff. It's why on the work groups, Sex Addiction 101 or Porn Addiction 101 are the number one and two. Get the foundation, and then you can go look at attachment wounds and inner child, and how to help the relationship, all of those things. But you can't do that when you're still, like you don't have a solid support, to not act out. Thoughts?
Tammy, sometimes you've said it all and I don't need to say a word. In
Oh,
fact, I'm already thinking about the stuff you said, but I do want to say one thing about this, and it's exactly what you said. I don't care why. What I care about is, did they do it? Did they hurt me? Did they act out? Are they doing things that work against my relationship? Are they lying and keeping secrets? I don't care why. Why is interesting, but the reality is if it's destroying your life and destroying your relationship, and I've said this also many times, we don't define addiction by how often necessarily, or, I don't define alcoholism necessarily by what kind of things people like to drink, or I don't define it by how often they drink. I define it by how they're affecting their lives. And so in this case, I would say, how is it affecting your relationship, the two of you, your parenting? How does it leave you feeling at the end of the day? Because I'm going to say, Stacey, I don't think this is a very nice person. And I will say one more thing is that the cheating part. It is true that many of us had parents who were sexually inappropriate. That doesn't mean they were quote unquote cheating. I had a mom who basically saw me as her boyfriend. She would confide in me. She would take me out. She would pick out my clothes. She would, go to the theater when my dad didn't want to. So I basically became her emotional support and guide. And by the way, when you have a child, You're supposed to be the emotionally present person and guide. So when I think about cheating, and I want to say to all of you, it is meaningful that parents have cheated, certainly, but it's just as meaningful when they have leaned on a child more than a child has been able to lean on them, because it's a very seductive, inappropriate, problematic relationship. So the fact that they cheated is less interesting to me than how did they deal with it with you? How were you? What was the relationship they had with you? How healthy? They cheated. We learned things. I'll tell you what I learned. My mom cheated, and by the way, Tammy knows I'm a love child, which I didn't find out until we had, the ways that we could test for DNA and all that. But it wasn't that. It was that the secrets. I knew something was wrong. I knew, and they would sort of hint at things or be quiet when I walked in the room or so, but they didn't tell me and they didn't tell me anything. And so I think the cheating is important to note, but I also am very interested in how these folks, did they leave your husband guessing? Did they, there's so many pieces to this, but bottom line is, I don't care why. I see the word individual, you care about them. You know, by the way, if you want to attend a graduate course, you're welcome to. If you're in a relationship, and here's a good one, I do consultations where you can sit with me for 2 hours and we'll sort this stuff out. This is some of my favorite work is sitting, and one of my best skills is assessment and evaluation. I can pretty quickly determine what's going on. So call Seeking Integrity, find a way to sit down with me for a couple of hours. The other thing I will say is that Tammy is, in case you haven't noticed this, an amazing coach and an amazing guide. And some of you who will reach out and say, Tammy, I just need this guidance. I don't know what to do. And I think she is obviously a terrific guide to be able to work through some of these things. And we're not talking about long-term therapy. We're talking about questions, ways to take care of yourself, ways to find through difficult circumstances, more about education and giving you direction. But boy, is she good at that. So we're both available to you in case you didn't know that.
And I just put that in. We do have support sessions. There are 6 of us. I am the only female, but I work with addicts, couples, or betrayed partners, whatever. They're 25 or 50 minutes. It's zero pressure. I really want to hear and give you the best guidance for you to be able to move forward. So,
Can I say
okay,
one more thing about my
please,
consultations? We can ask the last question, which someone said, well, why don't you just see the addicts? Or why don't you just see the partners? And
because
for
they
me,
lie.
I only want to work with a couple. And especially, being who I am in the field, I will have a husband work for hours with me, and then he'll go to his spouse. Well, Dr. Weiss said, and Dr. Weiss said, well, you don't know what I actually said. So it's really important for me in the work I do. I want to work couples, and I mean, I do 2-hour consultations, but I want to see both. I want to see how you talk to each other, how you look at each other. Are you sitting at opposite ends of the couch? Are you holding hands? I mean, every piece of it, since these are almost always couples issues, I want to understand and see you both. Um, I know we're going to do more, Tammy. I'm up for it. What do we got?
Okay, the next one. This is an interesting question. So you believe the addict can never be left alone? Would you confirm that these people can never be trusted again? So there's two different questions here to me. Oh my gosh, if the addict, like there was a woman a long time ago. I won't go into the details because I don't want to give any information. But like, actually, I've had a number of these where they are desperately trying to bubble wrap their person up so that they can't. He's always with me, and I thought, how suffocating for both of you.
Right.
Can they ever be trusted again? I know my husband trusts me. Like, I will never say I'll never act out again, but I know he trusts me because my actions show him I'm do what I need to do on a daily basis to take care of things so that I don't, act out today. I work really hard at being a person of integrity. If I do something incorrect, and I do, then I work really hard at making an amends quickly and clean up that. So yeah, we absolutely. But if you've been on these at all, you've heard we have a webinar. We talked about real recovery takes 2 to 5 years of doing the things that we need to do, not just watching the time slip by on a calendar. Like if we just sit back and like, well, it's been 2 years, nothing's going to change. I say this often, nothing changes if nothing changes. It's how are we showing up? How are we, what actions are we doing so that we make sure we aren't going right back to the same things? But should we never be left alone? No, that's our responsibility. If you're always monitoring, like you feel like you have to monitor and track, that is a kind of a parental child role, and it's never internalized. It's always, and it actually, here's another hint: addicts get resentful. We get mad if we feel like we're being controlled. So if we turn it around and go, I am choosing to do this because this is what the path I want to be on. I don't want to keep doing these negative things. Then we own it, and then we are going to be highly motivated to do the right things. If it's just we don't want to get in trouble, that does not last. We forget really quickly. So thoughts?
And I just want to give some feedback. And as I always say, the dog needs a walk. Um, Trust will never be the same,
Mm-hmm.
and I tell this story, if you have an employee and you walk in early one morning and they're in the petty cash, um, you might keep them as an employee because they're desperate and their kids, aren't eating, whatever the reason is that they did this. But if I come in the morning, one morning, 3 years later, and they're in the petty cash, guess where I'm going to go right in my head? Also, I'll probably be checking the petty cash each month to make sure that it's accurate. So even if I hold on to trust and rebuild it, there will always be a part of me that says, you know, I'm not sure. And the one thing I would tell you, partners, is trust your gut. Trust your gut. If something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. It may not be this, but something's going on and you just know it inside. And we will stuff that down. I don't want to cause trouble. I don't want to bring things up. You have to speak to what's inside of you. As a friend of mine says, your knower knows. And, I would trust that. I would trust that. But is trust ever restored in the way that you held it? I'll stop with this. Once, when I am in a relationship with you, the last thing I think would ever happen is you would go out in the world and hurt me. That you would go out in the world and deliberately do things that you know would hurt me. It never even crosses my mind that you would do anything but have my back when you go out in the world. But once I find out that you can do things that hurt me, that you can do them without thinking, and you don't have my back, I'm never going to be able to trust you in the way that I did. And when you walk out the door, there'll always be a part of me that says, huh, are they going to come back in, and will they be back where they were or not? I mean, it's the nature of being human. Um, so no, it will never be the same, but it can be rebuilt. By the way, I was looking at something about this, Tammy, as you know, and I asked what full trust means. I went on AI and it says
Mm-hmm.
radical honesty over time, no selective truth, no minimizing. Two, external accountability. Are they going to therapy? Are they going to groups? Are they monitoring themselves? Three, Tammy, I'm sorry, but AI can be helpful. Behavioral
I no,
cons-
I used it earlier today, so you'll be
Behavioral
following.
consistency when there's stress, when there's conflict and boredom, not just things when things are calm. Can they repair without defensiveness when they're confronted? I wrote a book about this called Out of the Doghouse, trying to teach men not to say, it's okay, and I didn't do this, and why are you going after me? But to say, I can understand why you don't feel trusting of me. And finally, to accept that trust is conditional. And trust we talk about this a lot, like forgiveness or grief, trust is a process. I don't just trust you or not trust you. I begin to trust you. I'm thinking, there's a whole set of experiences that lead you to, I'm going to have trust, never 100% like I did, but I deeply trust. And maybe the thing to trust is that at all times, this person has your best interest in heart. And there's a lot of Dr. Stan Tatkin again says, the best relationships are when I go out in the world and I make decisions and they're based on what's best for us. And I think that means that when you go out in the world, you always have me in mind in some way. You're not thinking I can get away with this and they won't know, but what will be the best decision that I can make for both of us? And I'll tell you, that's the way to have a good relationship. So thank you, Tammy.
Agree, agree.
Enjoyed it. And
Yeah,
we're
thanks,
to talk
everyone.
tomorrow about work.
Yes, sounds
So I'll
good.
talk to
All
you
right.
later.
Bye,
Bye now.
everyone. Thanks for the questions.